Welcome to this lecture on content development. In today's multimedia-driven world, online content needs to be developed in terms of relevance and pertinence. It also needs to engage the user and deliver the content in a manner which can be understood by the end users. So we will be looking at Robert Gagnes' 9 events of instruction. Robert Gagnes is famous for having written the book Conditions of Learning, in which he discusses the human mind and the way in which it interacts with knowledge. He documented these 9 steps in the process of learning. The first step involves gaining attention of the individual learner. The second involves informing the learner of the required objectives or learning outcomes. The third involves linking the current module with prior learning. The fourth involves presenting of the actual content, followed by guidance from the instructor or facilitator. The next step is the application of this knowledge in the form of practice, followed by feedback from the instructor to the respective student. Performance is assessed and retention can be attained by ensuring that there is an empathy between the content and the one which needs to be actually practiced. Let us look at these 9 events of instruction in terms of actual application. So the first thing which we need to do is gain attention. So we can gain attention as instructors using introductory videos, narratives, or perspectives. In some cases, we can use current events or news items which are sensational to attract a learner to a specific topic. For instance, in this case, I will present a braille text and request that the class interpret what it means. So this basically gains attention to people with different abilities or disabled individuals, as not all individuals are braille literate. So then I introduce my lecture, which is welcome to this lecture on disabilities. I now need to highlight a specific point about disabilities. In order to bring the students' focus on a specific point, I can state a fact such as this one, which says that 500,000 Malaysians have no access to your educational material. This fact draws their attention to a specific instance which we all encounter in our daily lives. The second aspect is to introduce the users to their learning objectives. Learning objectives will facilitate the development of focus of the learner. So we use certain terms such as this lecture will focus on, or upon completion of this lecture you should demonstrate the ability to, and other variables which can be measured in the cognitive taxonomy. So today we will be learning about the Persons with Disabilities Act 685. So this will involve review of the Act and application of it to a specific context. Now, in order to align or orient the students with the current lesson, I need to address prior learning. So assuming that the class consists of educators or teachers, we focus on instructional design. So we focus on different learning theories and such as constructivist or connectivist model and link them to our current topic. Subsequent to orientation, we introduce the content, which is in the form of the learning object. So in this case, we are focusing on the Disabilities Act. So we basically reference specific sections of the Act and address specific items or articles in the Act. So we are looking in terms of education. So we focus on exclusion from higher education and then how we can address inclusivity. Now, during the process of the class, the facilitator can provide guidance. This guidance can be in the form of cross-reference material. So we look for legislation related to disabilities from other countries in order to facilitate the process of learning and knowledge retention. Subsequent to knowledge, the next domain we address is application. So how can content be applied to specific situations? For instance, in the case of disability learning, we can empathize with a visually challenged individual and design our lesson plan from the perspective of a visually challenged individual. This may involve the use of audio files or the conversion to Braille formats to facilitate delivery of the content. Now, when material has been developed by the student, it's the duty of the lecturer to provide feedback. So a class generally involves development of a small module followed by feedback. Feedback provides reinforcement to the student. So for example, the feedback may be, what did you learn from the process of development of this material? And here is how you can improve upon it. And the facilitator can provide the requisite cues to assist the student. The next step is assessment, which is part of the learning cycle, in which we assess the learner, him or herself, as well as the content of the course itself, to determine effectiveness of that particular module. So this can be a very specific question, like how many categories of differently able individuals are classified under the Act 685, which in turn will require the user to reference the Act and go through the content. The next step is transfer. So we try and transfer the learning to new situations in order to develop a learning thread, as well as to establish context or perspective. For example, in this current plan, we have focused on developing content for visually impaired individuals. We now want to extend this to individuals with speech disabilities or hearing disabilities. How will we address this issue? That's what we talk about transference. Finally, we end the lecture with a specific icon which can highlight disabilities. In this case, I am using an icon for thank you to replace the conventional way of thanking students for attending this lecture. So that's the way in which we use Gagnes' 9 events of instructional design to facilitate learning among students. Thank you.